Good morning. Uh, my name is Daniel. I'm the founder of Mariposa, and we're currently waiting for my wife to join us on Instagram Live. So, we'll be talking about. I'm new to Instagram, so I'm reading a little bit what's going on. Um, I'm supposed to receive an invitation. Okay.
Hi. Great, we're live. Um, cannot really see how many people are with us. Hello, everyone. Katerina More is with you. And here's my husband. So today we're going to talk about our startup city in Mariposa. And for those of you who have never heard about it, it will be a chance to learn. And for those who have heard about it, you can learn some detail. So we will start. Today we're going to talk about all kinds of things. And we will talk about why we decided to start Honduras, why it is eco city, what kind of technologies we're going to use on that eco city, how it influences the culture, and even how can we make taxation system in the city in a way that it promotes wise of use of land and also encourages development, encourages economic growth. So maybe we can start then, maybe you can start telling us why we decided to do it in Honduras and what is it so special about Honduras, which is special economic growth in Honduras.
Yeah. By the way, your audio sounds metallic. I'm not sure what's happening, but when you speak, it sounds it's like you're maybe too close to the microphone. Do you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. What's
Maybe
happening?
use the sound. I don't know. We'll see. Is it better?
Yeah, maybe. It just sounds like a very like kind of like a cat scratching or something. So what's happening around to us is in 2012 they changed their constitution to allow autonomous regions. They're called special economic zone. There's about 10,000 of them around the world, depending how you count them, but there's at least 4,000 that are distinct because sometimes an economic zone may have like two sides or something like this. And what is unique about Honduras is that they're the most advanced. They allow most of the economic zone people work in them and they go back home. But these ones in Honduras, they allow people to live inside. So, and we have in these zones, the people have autonomy over their taxes, their law, their police, even their prison, like their healthcare, education. It's almost like a country. You're still part of the country because to live in the zone, you still need to have a legal status in the host country in Honduras, but pretty much else, it's up to you to organize it. So it opens a lot of possibility. Honduras is also a poor country, which also have a huge advantage because doing right, we can have lower prices than anybody else on the international scale. Even like, for instance, like having a software house, we can produce software in Honduras and for a fraction of the price that you would have to pay for somebody living, let's say, in San Francisco. So there's lots of advantages living in a country where things are very, very cheap, and it can really increase the quality of life for the local people. So, and personal life, that's in America. So that's a plus too. So that's why we chose Honduras. Honduras also was the first country in the Western Hemisphere to have a free trade zone. So they have a long history of having these, and they honor how can I say this, contract, in the sense that they never violated these zones. Canada, United States, European, I mean, there's, I think in the United States, like 200 alone. And I'm not even including the 500 regions of native people, because these are almost similar, where people live and they have their own laws, their own police, their own rules, their own taxes. So this is why we choose Honduras. Like,
I also would add that Dan and I, we have been talking about what could be a better type of society, a society that would solve most of the problems we see in the political arena, like these endless debates and problems with taxes and all kind of other problems, right? And then at some point he created a constitution of non-existing society, and we have been talking about this. Actually, it's not just a constitution. It was the way it was written. It was like a set of rules, but under each rule, then was explaining why this rule would work in this case, or why the opposite rule didn't work in the history of humanity, or why this new rule is possible because of the new technologies that are available to us. And we discussed it with our friends, and many of our friends liked it. The question was where to do it, because if you bring like something completely innovative like we do, a police-centric system of governance, you cannot just go to the government of a country like Canada, which is the second largest in the world after Russia, and say, hey, can we just change your system and apply it to the whole country with a huge population, while Honduras actually allows us that kind of experiment. You can have a small piece of land where you can build a small city and see if it works, like a new type of system works on the small scale. So it allows economic experiment, and also if it fails, it's not a big deal because it's a very small city. If it works, though, it has the potential to grow, and there is a possibility to replicate this this kind of experiment on a larger scale. Right, Dan?
The other thing too, that if it fails, it usually only involves volunteers, because let's say, for instance, our project Mariposa, people will come voluntarily. Like, we will not force people to come, and they will be aware of what kind of system it is. So if it fails, these people, they came there, they were kind of aware it's a new system. There's always a risk when there's a new system that, you know, something may not work, but usually you get a lot less complaint than if you try to impose something on an existing population and it produces bad results. Then the people that I told you so, they have a reason to do so. So this is the nice thing about these zones, is it's very voluntary. There's no need to use coercion. We buy a land on the market price. It's going to be mostly like a farm, because it's the land that is the most affordable. And then we kind of design the streets and design and try to attract people and say, hey, come here. Life could be better here, because at the moment it's a could. Like, it's still like
what is interesting about this special economic zones, that they allow a competitive governance, which means that people can create several of that kind of semi-autonomous cities, and you know, they move into the city whose governance they like the most. Hi, Arturo.
Hello.
And so if they don't like the governance in one city, they technically can switch the city and go to another place, and they don't need to go through a hard paperwork of international immigration. And hopefully one of those cities, or maybe more than one, is successful, right? So what I would like to talk to you now is that kind of competition we also want to bring inside of our city, but in a little bit different form. If the cities in Orzledes inside of Honduras, they will compete against each other on more territorial basis, right? So you will have to physically move if you want to to live in a certain type of city with certain type of governance. In our city, we want to go one step further and create non-territorial competitive governance. And the form, the shape, how we are going to create it, it's called polycentric system of governance. And what is interesting is that my husband Dan came up with this idea already 10 years ago. Of course, these ideas have evolved over 10 years because the technology changed, the world has changed, we became wiser, we know more about all kind of aspects of city life and the city construction, let's put it this way. So, but what is interesting is that this particular year when we started working really hard on trying to put all these ideas together and submit our master plan to Honduran government, I started looking for in the internet if we can find some support to our ideas that could help us to be approved. And what is interesting that what I found out is that actually I found very similar ideas in the works of famous political economist Ostrom. And Eleanor Ostrom actually was the first woman that won a Nobel Prize in economics, and her work, her whole lifetime research was about polycentric system of governance. And they were studying polycentricity in like on the example of police, forestry, right?
Yeah.
What was another one? Irrigation is the word?
Irrigation system.
Fishery and irrigation systems, yes. So, and what is interesting, so she summarized her life research and and she won a Nobel Prize. And what was interesting about this research is that in her time, back in, I believe, 70s, when she just started, they were talking only that there are only two types of property, public and private. And there is only two types of solutions for things, is to privatize things or to nationalize things. So, and nowadays, there are new ideas coming out, and there is all kind of solutions, and there could be anything in between, right? And what she found out is that there were always this theoretical battle: is it better to have a centralized power, or is it better to have polycentric power when the decentralized power? And she found out through empirical research that it's actually the form of governance that is most effective in providing public goods and services were polycentric ones. For instance, they were comparing two towns that had different type of police structure. One of the towns had one big department, and another town had a lot of small departments with some of them were small, some of them were bigger. There were also a little bit of hierarchy between them. And what they found out is that in that town where there were lots of a little bit overlapping police departments, the police service was much better because the sheriffs, the police officers knew everyone around the district that they served, and they never changed. And they also found a way, they were cooperating with other police departments in a spontaneous manner, but in a way more effective than the one big police department did in another town, where the left hand didn't know what the right did, and vice versa. So, and these kind of experiments or research were repeated, and they found this exactly the same thing in the fishery, in the irrigation system, in what I mentioned again, and forestry. they found out that people on the places are often, just because they are so motivated to bring the solution for their life, they come up with the solutions that are more effective and better than those people than in the centralized government. Like when the centralized government tries to solve from while being in the capital, somewhere far away from the action. I'll give you an example. For instance, if there is no fish in the lake, and a bunch of fishermen are affected by this, just because, you know, if there is no fish, they have no jobs, they have no money to provide to the family. The motivation is much higher than somebody, or let's say an engineer with a high education, and he may be very smart, but he lives in the capital and he's not affected by the fish in this lake directly, right? So that was kind of interesting. So her conclusions was that so the small groups are often much more higher motivated and much more effective in creating solutions, and what we want to create, and I think that her ideas are really supporting our ideas of polycentricity, is that we can create a system where the power is decentralized and where people are capable to solve this kind of problems, right? Like the local problems on their own, much faster and in a more efficient way. So I tried to summarize the work of several researchers, the Ostrom and her followers, and created a new definition of polycentric system of governance that we use on our website. And it sounds like that. Polycentric system of governance is a complex form of governance with multiple centers of simultaneous decision-making operating under an overarching set of rules that act as a framework, allowing the centers mentioned above take each other into account in competitive and cooperative relationships and have a recourse to conflict resolution mechanisms. Then would you like to introduce a little bit how it's going to work in our case?
Sure. By the way, the problem that we're talking about, when we talk about group to solve their problem, we mainly talk about, let's say, things like education and healthcare. And the thing is that there's no one size fits all. I'm just going to give an example. Let's say you have an older couple, they will probably have, you know, higher need for healthcare services, and maybe they want to have like a nurse coming home every month. And if you take a younger couple with small children, well, the healthcare is very minimal. I mean, they may see a doctor once in a while, but it's usually pretty cheap. But they want to have good education and maybe even healthcare services. So these two people, if you put them together, they will never be able to find a ground in the middle. There's always something that, you know, they're just at the opposite because of their age and lifestyle and everything. So by having a polycentric system of governance, what we can do is we can group was specialized for certain types of clientele. So there will be group that will say, hey, we have like great healthcare services. Some of this is we have great education. Some even try to do both. And residents can choose which group they want to belong. And 50% of our tax budget will be sent to this group in proportion to their numbers of members. So as a resident, you can choose. So instead of Mariposa say, hey, we spend 50% on our healthcare and education and welfare, we say, hey, make little groups and we'll give you your money and you organize yourself the way you want. And groups also have their own rules. So if you join the group say you have to do 1 day of volunteer per month because, you know, we're offering these extra services, and people will organize themselves. So, and when we talk about the overarching rules is that we have some higher rules that belong to all these groups that we call civic societies. For instance, you're not allowed to prevent somebody from leaving. So if somebody is not happy with the group, he has the freedom to leave and choose another group. So that's a rule. You cannot even put in a contract that you have to stay or something like this. There are certain rules about how they have to resolve conflicts. Every group must have some rules how to resolve conflict within their groups. and also some arbitration agency in case there's a conflict between two people of a group or with a business. So there's some contracts to say, hey, you agree that if you go to this group and there's a conflict, this is the person or this is the group of people that will help to resolve disputes. So the numbers of overall rules are very, very simple. Most of them actually, they're even like just constitution guarantees, like freedom of speech and the things that are considered like normal. The Honduran constitution as a constitution, we read all of it. It's pretty standard in a sense that they have like a few things that may look a little odd, but overall, like it's just like a constitution that says that you have the right for movement, the right freedom of speech. You cannot force somebody to work. So in Mariposa we'll have the same thing, but we have also the rule that you can choose, and the civic society can also boot you out. So if you don't follow the rules or you're a troublemaker, they can say we don't want you. And in Mariposa, if no groups want you, first of all, you don't receive your social dividend, like half of the taxes. We call it the social dividend, and you have no place to stay.
What I would like to say is that that kind of system allows that there will be no corruption. It's just impossible, because in centralized government, even if some, like a politician or let's say president of the country screws up, well, at most he will face a fine, right? Well, unless he did something really bad, then he has to go to jail. But and most of the time, they don't lose the positions. They don't have any incentive to improve or to change if they do something wrong. While in polycentric system of governance, what is interesting is that it will function on the market base, right? Then so in this case, because you can switch between the government services providers, right? That will be called civic societies. It basically works like with businesses. Like, let's say if you have an internet provider that you are not happy, but you can switch to another internet provider that provides a better service, right? So the same thing, we may have civic societies that are specializing in similar things. Like, let's say we can have 3 civic societies that are family oriented, but they solve or they provide services in a different way. Maybe one of them will be providing services in a more efficient way. In this case, the corruption is just impossible, because if you have 2 similar products or almost the same products or services, but you have to pay more for it in some civic society, the customers of the civic societies or the residents, they will think twice if they want to remain there. They may decide just to switch and to go to another civic society that provides the same service but cheaper. So in this case, what will happen to the people who are corrupt or who are not smart enough to make it efficient enough, their civic society will just fall apart over time. And that's it.
And what is unique in Mariposa is we call it non-territorial, because you don't need to physically move to switch civic society. Let's say you live in a city and you don't like the way that the security is working, and you say, oh, this city nearby has a better security, or they offer better parks or better education. Well, you have to move physically. That's a cost. I mean, buying a new house, even like you may need a different job. So all of a sudden, it's not really worth it. But in Mariposa, if you want to have a better education or better healthcare, you can just find one. And we also encourage people to create their own. So we'll have a few rules, like you need to be 20 people. We want a minimum so people get organized, and we don't want to give the money just to 1 or 2 per person, because they may use the money to drink or to do some other things. But if there's a little group, there will be a president, this group will provide like a framework of how they want to do it. They just need to attract people. So, and if they're below 20, they just stop receiving the social dividends. So they're going to scramble to join other groups that are more efficient. So it's a very, very simple way to provide government services. And we don't need to have bureaucracy. We don't need to have like planners, how many hospitals, how many schools, teachers, directors. Like, we let people organize themselves.
And also what is interesting about that, well, there's several benefits of having this system, and another one that is probably dear to the heart of everyone is that we have seen, many of us have seen it not even once, political debates that they just go nowhere, just because every 4 years we have to choose a new president or new parliament or whatever, and we have to fight with our neighbors that have different views about how the world should be organized, right, than us. And why? Just because if our system doesn't win, well, we'll have to wait another 4 years, or maybe we'll suffer, or whatever. In our system, you don't have to fight for your political ideas. You can just organize yourself, your group, the way you want, and you can try your political ideas right away and see if it works for you and for your own group, for your society. You can be an active member in creating your dream life right from the start, and stop using this, spending your energy for unproductive debate, right? Instead, you can use it for creating something and improving your life. And then in this case, you are not even, you don't feel bad about your neighbors that have different point of view, because, well, they can organize their life the way they want. Then it's no more important for us, and we can allow others to be happy in their own way, and it doesn't bother us anymore. So in this way, societies that lives in this kind of polycentric system, well, the way we imagine it, will be much happier than society we see in a democratic system, where people have to fight all the time for one model fits all.
Yeah. We could even have people that are communist, and if you join a civic society, you have to share with everybody. And if it's a small group, maybe they would even have better things. They could have cars, especially if they're like poor people from Honduras. Let's say they have a car for everybody, and they have a schedule who can use it. They could have maybe a piano, there's all kinds of things you can do if you're a group of people and you pull resources together. On the other hand, if they start being corrupt or people start to cheat, the group will just fall apart, which is normal. Another example of polycentricity would be like religion. Imagine if every 4 years we have to vote on which is the official religion for a country, and everybody now must attend the church over there. It will just create endless debates and we'll go nowhere. And the truth is that there is all kinds of overlapping religion all over the countries, all over the world. The same city can have maybe 10, 20, maybe, I don't know, I don't keep track of how many religions. And people seems to be happy, like as long as the religion is peaceful and they're not trying to impose on others or try to use violence, it just works fine. So at the political level, it could also be the same. Like there's no need to.
And another reason why these small kind of overlapping civic societies will be much more efficient in delivering the services, we can see in the principle. Then you like to say that about the way how the money is spent. Usually, what happens is that in the big centralized government, the politicians spend money of people they don't even know for people they don't even know, right? Then you want to explain why it works better in better society, civic societies.
Yeah. Well, what happened is there's 4 ways to spend money. This is there's a link on our website. It was designed by Milton Friedman. I think also he won an economic Nobel Prize, maybe not just for this, but just overall about economy. The first thing is you spend money for yourself. This is the most common thing: is you work hard, you earn your money, and you spend it for you, whatever it's for, food, clothes, whatever. And what you do in this case is you want to have a good price because it's your money, and because it's for you, you want also good quality. So you're looking for good price and quality. The other way you can spend money is you can spend your money for somebody else. So let's say you have to make a gift. And I'm not talking like you make a gift for your wife or somebody, because let's say you have to spend money for somebody you never met, you don't know, and you will never met. What you look for is you make sure it's not too expensive, but if it's quality or not, it's like, nah, not really. The third way to spend money is that you spend somebody else's money for you. So let's say, you work for Google, and they pay you a trip to go to a conference, and all the meal included. Well, you don't really look at how expensive is the menu, how things are, or if a company says we'll buy you any car you want. Well, you will probably go for a Mercedes or a high-end car, not like the cheapest car. So when you spend others' money for you, you look at good quality, but the price is not that important because you're not paying for it. And the last one is that you spend somebody else's money for somebody. This is what typical government bureaucrats do, or officials, is that. So what is unique about Mariposa is that we shift the money of others to their own money, because if a civic society receives money, it's now their money. And whatever they can save, let's say on healthcare, they can have on education or vice versa, or other services. So every civic society will have an incentive at any point to make sure that they spend their money as wise as possible. And the other thing
they spend the money for their own group that has exactly the same values, exactly the same needs. So usually they're going to look for a really good combination of price and quality, right?
And the other thing too is that most governments have budgets. So let's say there's a hospital, they have a budget. There's a school, they have a budget. And if they don't spend all of it, they're going to cut off, they're going to at least remove that money from this. Oh, you don't need it. And even sometimes even permanently going to cut off. I know a hospital when with some very good friends, and they were saying, look, if we don't spend all of it, not only they're going to remove the money from this year, but they're going to even lower our budget for next year. So we better have to spend all of it. So there is no incentive to try to save money. Like everybody spends as much money as possible, and they probably try to get more money from the government for next year because they have these extra expenses. So, but civic society, if they save, they can use it for somebody else. Maybe even they can save money and say, hey, we organize a dinner for all our members for Christmas, and it's all included.
Or maybe they can choose to invest in something to increase their own budget.
Yeah, and civic society may say, hey, in our civic society, we offer a laundry machine for washing their clothes. I'm talking about people that are really, really poor. They can do all kinds of things with their money as long as the people they kind of agree on them.
I wanted to also to make sure that according to the research and also our own ideas, polycentric system of governance is only a system when there is not only competition between the civic societies, but also a collaboration. So I don't know if you want to elaborate on that. How can societies, how can they collaborate?
Most of the time, people think businesses compete, but the most successful businesses are the ones that are the greatest at collaborating. Think about airlines, for instance, like the one that make deals where your luggage go from one airline industry to another one, so you don't need to move. Think about like telephone companies or email. If they say, well, you can only talk within our members, they would never do so. I've seen some companies where they say, hey, we have local calls. I remember one time I was in the US with 100 countries. So that means that they collaborated with 100 different companies in different countries to make deals. Usually it's reciprocity. You give us free access or local calls, we give you credit card companies, also soda can company. There's lots like USB, like you think about the world where we have the HTML, there's billions of dollars spent to create standards so that although there's competition, there's a lot of collaboration, like how it works. And for Mariposa, the civic societies is that, let's say there's 2 or 3 civic societies, then they say, hey, we cannot afford to have a hospital, but we can pull together resources and we can create our own clinic or something this, and they say to the member, hey, if you go there, it's free, or it's 50%, or whatever, or same for a school. So you will see some civic society that will share together, or even like fire services. Not every civic society wants to have, because fire services will be offered polycentric way. So maybe like we even have 10 civic society that will just pay like a small fee to maintain a fire station. And then because the one that discovers ways to make it cheaper will be rewarded by more clients. And it's not just rewarded. I mean, the people that will live there will just have the benefit. I mean, if you can save, it's amazing. Like, what was like some statistics? I'm just in New York, the fire station. Let me just finish this one. Every time the fire trucks leaves the New York station, New York City, it costs like $4,000. Every time the truck leaves, and they leave like every like 20 minutes in one of the places. There's always one, and most of the time it's for some cat stuck in the street or something like this. This is a big cost for the taxpayers. But imagine if you're civic society and say, well, when there's a cat stuck on the street, maybe we don't need to bring this big truck that is like 25-meter long and all of this. We can just send somebody with a little ladder, or even somebody who's skilled at climbing trees and can, cat lover that knows how to. So the thing is that they probably spend millions of dollars a year just to fetch cats that got stuck on the trees while they could have. So every civic society will have an incentive to try to cooperate, because certain services are very expensive. I mean, think about the hospital. I mean, if you're 20 people, you won't have your own hospital. It doesn't make sense. But you could find a system to cooperate with others. So, and they're going to compete. I mean compete the same as think about churches. They compete for members, but they're not like at war with others. They just wants to have more members or to have like certain things. So civic society will be more about that level, and we have the zero tolerance for violence. So if civic society is bullying or doing these things, the people that do this will be expelled from Mariposa. That's for sure. We're talking about like a voluntary interactions only. So.
Yeah. So I would like to ask you because we started we have 25 minutes, and I still want to talk about land tax and about ecological technology and all of this. Mm-hmm. And so I would like you just to can you just elaborate a little bit about, just maybe like 2-3 sentences about businesses in Mariposa. What I meant is like besides civic associations, civic societies, we're going to have also business associations that whose goal is to provide some kind of self-regulation, right?
Yeah.
That is different from centralized regulations of businesses. Why we want to create this, and why it will be more efficient than the centralized government?
So in Mariposa, the business registration will be very, very simple. But in order to be a valid business, you need to belong to a business association. So a business association will have very few rules, very similar to civic society, one of which is dispute resolutions. If a customer has a problem, or if they have another dispute with another business. So, and business associations also responsible to some extent a form of liability insurance. So if you're a hairdresser and you want to be part of a business association, the requirement probably lower than if you say like I want to do like some advanced surgery on, I don't know, like your vital organs. Then they would say, hey, you really need like certification about what you're doing, because it's going to affect our reputation, and maybe we'll have to afford money if you make a mistake. So there will be a form of self-regulation. Business association will also compete for reputation. So if they include a member that is either dishonest or that is just incompetent, at some point they may say, no, we don't want you because you're not competent enough. So you will see different circles. Some businesses will specialize in certain areas. Maybe some that sell food, they say, hey, we have an inspector that comes every week just to make sure, or give you little tips, how to make sure that it's all sanitary. These kinds of things, and they will charge the fee that they want. So it will be a markup for this. Maybe with a flat fee, maybe with a percentage. I don't know. Always says that you need to belong, and you can create your own business association too. We'll have like simple rules about like certain criteria, and we'll make sure that there's also a markup for this.
By the way, I wanted to mention that Dan has been working for many years, I think 8 years, right? If I remember right, on the software for our EcoCity. And this software, yeah.
Listening to us.
Yeah, so what is interesting about the software is that it will help us to do all kind of like governmental operations, but also it will allow our governance system to be more transparent, and also data that related to the government and expenditures and the pricing and I forgot what, there was like a long list of things. It could be even a scientific data related to the life in our society that will be all on our website, and it will be notarized on blockchain.
Yeah. So let's give an example. Let's say there's a small river. We can monitor the quality of the water and put it on a blockchain. So nobody can change the past. So we can monitor is the water quality improving or getting worse. Especially also we monitor the water that is coming to Mariposa versus exiting Mariposa. We want to make sure that it's the same quality, so we're not the one polluting. So if the river passes right through, we can do like maybe every 6 months. I don't know. It depends on the cost of the test and how hard it is. So we can have reliable data and show in the past that this is what it is. Because if you put this on a spreadsheet, somebody can just change the number in the past and say, oh, you see, it's improving, but in fact, it's not. The other thing too with this.
Yeah, and also this kind of data will allow other cities or countries around the world to learn from our experiment, because it will be this type of polycentric system of governance will be created for the first time, so they can learn from it and see what works, what doesn't, and they can replicate either the whole system or just some policies of some civic societies that they like, that they that works for them, right? So it's great for this. I would like just to switch now the topic to about our land policy, tax policy, how it's going to affect the land use wise. We hope that it will be wise, and how it also supports economic growth. Can you talk about this?
Yeah, so the only tax that we'll have in Mariposa, so of course it's always subjective, the government will approve, but according to the rules we're allowed to have this, it will be a land tax. So we'll tax the square meters of land that people use, even excluding the buildings. And what it does is if you pay for something, whether you use it or not, you better use it. So the concept of land idleness, where people buy a piece of land and they just wait a decade for the price to go up and then sell it as a profit, will not work in Mariposa, because you're going to pay a tax on the land regardless if you build something nice. And if you build something nice or you add an underground parking or something that you don't pay more than your neighbor who does nothing. So it's really a tax that encourages work, because you don't get penalized for this. There will be no sales tax, no income tax. Even according to the income legislation, we don't even have a customs tax. So we will only tax the land. And the way the tax will work, because I've talked with several experts, I in fact hired several of them, and they give me with formulas, and I'm an electrical engineer, so I'm familiar with formulas. Some of them are just like so big that I barely can understand them, and I'm just wondering what the average Joe will do with these. So what I came out with is a market-based tax. So in other words, give me a price for this site, and I'll say yes. But if two people want the same, we'll just give it to the one who offers the most. And we'll have a formula for equivalence, because, you know, if you have like 10 properties in a row, they all have the same land. You know, it's not like one has gold and the one has oil and this one is worth more. They all work the same, at least per square meter. So we have a formula to slowly adjust these things over the years so they're about the same. So that's how the tax system will work. So it's not even a tax, it's a market based, where people say how much they're offering. And I did a lot.
What's interesting is that this part of this tax will go to the civic societies to pay for the governance services, like healthcare, education, and other things. And it's the only tax that we will have in our society. Well, there's the only exception will be the like for alcohol and what was the other thing?
They call
tobacco.
We're likely to have three of them. One is alcohol products, the other one is tobacco, and the one is gasoline. And the only thing is we're going to have the same prices as the rest of the country. So we don't want people to just come to Mariposa to buy alcohol and leave. I mean, I'm not against alcohol, but we may just attract the wrong crowd for this. Same for tobacco. We try to live healthy, so it's not a product that I try to sponsor. And the tobacco and alcohol tax will go for malnourished children. So all the proceeds will go for this. So we don't even want to touch that money. And the gasoline tax, the same reason. We want people to have the same thing. We don't want also to make enemies with neighboring gas stations. That says it's unfair. And we're going to use all the gas tax to fix the roads. So, and if we're not, in Mariposa, we'll even start fixing roads a little bit like close, you know, within the neighborhood. So it's going to be good for us because we need, you know, people to come in and out, but also good publicity to say, hey, you know, we're using that tax for fixing roads, which should be this way, not for other projects. So maybe also other people could follow suit and say, hey, you know, maybe there could be a movement for this where they get tax exempt and there's like a website that they show everywhere where they fix because there are some scary holes in Honduras.
And I would just tax and just to mention that land tax will allow economic growth, and not only economic growth, but also it will help those people who are in deep poverty to start off, because most of the time people, even to start building a house, they need first to buy a land. What if these people, there are people that lost the house, lost everything, like what happened in Honduras just last November, when the second hurricane came and destroyed lots of houses. There were lots of flooding, and what these people can have a new start in our startup city, and much easier because you don't have to buy the land. They just they will have to pay only land tax, and they can be on this land as long as they pay this land tax. And we want to make it as cheap as $1 per 60 square meters, right? It's enough.
We want to offer land for $1 a day for 60 square meters, and we're going to offer it for $2 a day for 120 square meters. So it's going to be proportional. So people, 60 square meters is not much, but it's enough to build a small house. It's at least better than who they are currently is on the street. And we call it a land tax, but it's the market. Whatever you like it or not, if a land is valuable, you're going to either pay it to the owner or to the bank or to somebody else. So what is unique at Mariposa is that when you pay this fee, you pay it back to Mariposa, which we give it back to the community in terms of services and even the social dividend. So the land tax may actually be, the land tax combined with the social dividend may be actually the recipe to remove poverty and inequality, because if there's lots of wealth, what happens is everybody will receive a piece of it as a social dividend. So they're like almost a universal basic income. And don't call it socialism, because socialism is controlled by an entity. You know, it's like the government who owns. So we're a market-based welfare system. So everything is a market, and you know, and the market also tends to produce more wealth. So the poorer people tend to be wealthier in a good market environment than not. And we'll make sure they have also opportunity to work. But even if they don't work, at least it's a market-based. So in Hong Kong, Singapore, there's also several cities that have implemented the land tax. Many of them, it's called a split rate, so they tax the land more than the property. They have seen amazing result, whatever it was during the Great Depression, which was almost 100 years ago. So there's lots of empirical evidence. People may ask why it's not used widely. Well, I can tell you the thing is, when you tax the land value drops. And most of the people who own a lot of land, they have political connections and they don't want the value of their land to drop, so they prefer to not have a tax. But it's the most fair system compared to the sales tax, which, by the way, the sales tax, even according to Wikipedia, is considered regressive. That means that it hurts the poor the most, because most of the poor people, they spend all their money on taxable things, and the rich people, they invest. So they don't pay the sales tax if you invest. You know, if you let's say you make $1 million a year, maybe you spend 100,000 on you, and you invest the rest. Well, the 900,000 will not be taxed. And the income tax is also discouraged work. It's also a huge invasion on privacy. The land tax, it's mathematical formula. You don't even need to see the property. You just calculate numbers of square meters that you use. And, you know, we have a system like this. So we think the land tax will definitely help the society.
Then I see that we have about 10 minutes left. So I suggest that everybody who is watching us live, if you have any questions, it's time to ask them. Meanwhile, I would like just to touch a little bit the topic of ecological technologies in our city. And I suggest that the rest of the topics that we put on our agenda. Maybe we can make another Instagram Live in February when we elaborate on other parts of our vision for Mariposa City, even like those parts as a culture of nonviolence, restorative justice. By the way, if you want to learn about restorative justice, you just we just posted a post. It's under the quote, "Good ideas do not require force." Check it out. It has a fascinating statistics from the prisons of Brazil that you will like, and it may even surprise you in a good way. So check it out. And we can talk about ecstatic verse, which is my passion. How can we, what it is, and how we can create ecstatic verse culture. And maybe even there's so many topics and so many things that we want to implement in our city. So it's 1 hour will be never enough, right? So if you have any questions right now, type them in the comments. It's a good time. Meanwhile, I would like just to mention that we're also looking for the land to. Right now, Startup City Mariposa is still an idea. We are looking for a land to implement these ideas, and we're looking for a land that will allow us to build an ecological city. Why I say eco city? It's not just about recycling or having no plastic. It's all great, but also the idea behind this is to improve the quality of life and our health as much as we can. So one of the things that we discovered over the past years is that, for instance, one of the biggest impact on our for our health is brings our environment. We often think that to take care of environment is something that we have to do to take care of our Mother Nature or Mother Earth. But the truth is, by taking care about our Mother Earth, we're taking care about ourselves, because you cannot just put the garbage outside. I think that inside of you, inside of your body, you will remain clean. Those chemicals that we put outside, they actually affect our body, and they affect in a way that that these toxins that accumulate in our body create diseases in our body. And this is a topic of there's a new emerging type of medicine that's called functional medicine. You can also look it up in the resource section of our website, what functional medicine is. We can talk more about it in another Instagram Live. But the point is, the chemical load is affecting our own health in a way that sometimes we don't even know until we test for it, right? And most people never test for this. So for us, it is important that our startup city is in a place where it is affected by the chemical the least. So it's a pure place near the forest. So we're looking for a place that is a little bit far from typical agricultural fields where they spray the most typical pesticides and stuff. And we hope to attract organic farming. I know it will be challenging, but in a way, we're looking for smart solutions. There is vertical farming nowadays. There is how do you say hydroponics? That's correct. If I pronounce it correctly. Yeah, so there is several solutions, and we hope that 1 or 2 of them will be implemented in our city. But there is more to it. There is a way we can reduce the pollution in our city, and there is a way, in a smart way. One of the most fascinating things that my husband found was that I didn't even know that. Did you know that 80% of untreated dirty water that comes from our kitchen, toilet, and so on, go untreated directly to the rivers of our earth? 80% is huge, right? What can we do? Yeah. And my husband has made some research about different sewer systems, and he found several solutions. Can you just say maybe a few words about it, and maybe we will finish there?
Yeah, well, my goal, first of all, was to reduce the cost because at $1 a day, every penny counts, you see. So one of the things that is very expensive is the sewage system. And today there's ways to recycle what's called the gray water. And the gray water is the water from the shower, when you wash your hands, you wash your clothes, you know, and that's like, it's really, really dirty clothes, typical. This also counts for about 80% of the water that people consume. Flushing the toilet counts about for 20%. So you can recycle your water at the back. You can have some plants that love water and will grow. You can grow fruits. In fact, in the US, there's lots of studies about this. There's never been even a single person reported sick because of this, you know, by eating fruits that were irrigated from gray water recycling. And as for the toilets, what happened is that there's ways to have way to, you know, use this, they call it the black water, and a much more efficient way and much more environment friendly. So, I mean, I'm not an expert, but I'm learning, and there's people, we have people on the advisory board. One of them, we even built a system for a city in Mexico for over 1 million people. So there's people with experience on this. There's also people who are more like green people, so they will be happy to help, especially if we compensate them with money and we give them credit for their work. So this is also something that that we're considering. And I'm just looking at the time because we're supposed to do in an hour, so I'm going to need at some point to push on the end button. So these are things that we're looking. We want to avoid the chemicals as much as possible. One way also to do ecological living is we're going to have a form-based building codes, so which means that all the first floor will be commercial, so people will be able to walk and bike. So it's easier. Think about like an open-air shopping mall where, you know, you have like between building and run little bridges in case there's rain, so people can cross. I mean, it won't be at the beginning, but that's the goal. We want to be people can live on the second, third, or fourth floor. So when everything is at proximity, you don't need a car that much. And it also provides affordable housing because a car is expensive. It's not just the car, it's like the parking and all these extra things that it adds. If you look at cities, there's maps that show that almost half of the space of an entire city is dedicated for cars, from parkings to roads to all kinds of things. Businesses, you know, you look, if you go to a Walmart, usually the parking lot is bigger than the store itself. And I'm not against it. We have one too, it's a necessity. But if you can have a system where you could live, oh, I think I'm out of time, nearby, it's much more ecological if you could walk or bike. And if you have bike lanes, cities that created bike lanes, bike come automatically. The problem is most cities, they said there's no bikes. Well, there's no bike because there's no bike lanes. And, you know, you don't want to be bicycles and compete with cars and trucks. The laws of physics tells you that if there's
and as you said, it's possible to make really nice bike trails that are separated from the street where the car goes by a line of trees, right? And it makes the street more beautiful, and people that bike and walk also feel more protected.
Usually what is like
I think that we need to finish though. If we, maybe we can elaborate a little bit more about it next time. If you have any questions, you just type them in the comment. You can type them also under the, this Instagram live is going to be published in a few minutes as a post, so you can just comment under the post, and we will, for sure, we will respond to your questions, and maybe we'll use them for the next Instagram live. So thank you for us. We hope you enjoyed it, and bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good day.
Bye.